Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, joined here by my colleague, Mr. Brian E. Roach, for a not Black Friday edition, but a black and gold Friday edition of our show. Boom! I just dropped the mic. How you doing, my friend Brian, on this glorious post-stuff your face with turkey day?
I see what you did there. That was very clever. You're a clever man.
You know, I try my best, or so I'm told. So, got a game coming up Sunday, and hopefully it's a little bit better of participation and whatnot. It seems like all we do is go through all of the injury reports whenever we have these shows, and anymore, it's like we have to wait in order to do this. Not that either of us stuffed. You did stuff yourself with some turkey or stuffing, or some people call it dressing. Who calls it dressing?
I don't do that crap. That breading crap that gets shoved in a turkey, but I don't do that. No, that stuff's out.
How about mashed potatoes?
I had a tiny bit of mashed potatoes, but only because we had corn. And I cannot eat corn appropriately unless I can put it in mashed potatoes and then have a mashed potato corn amalgam of crap. I had a lot of turkey. I had a good amount of turkey.
The concoction I came up with, I was getting a little harassed from the other half on doing this the night before Thanksgiving. Was I created my own KFC bowl at home, and it was mashed potatoes, corn, gravy, popcorn chicken, and some the shredded mild cheddar cheese. And my friend, that was delicious. So yeah, yesterday was just let's have some adult beverages and attempt to carve a turkey after having done that. And I got all 10 digits here. I could verify that on video. So I survived that. We'll see how this is going to go through the rest of the week, because we've got, it's like a 4-day holiday for me, probably for you, for a lot of folks out there in some form or fashion. We're all busy running around. Some people are putting up Christmas decorations. I'll be getting to that now. Now you can turn Mariah Carey on if you want. Anything before yesterday was prohibited.
Why would you do that?
It's Mimi.
Why would you ever turn that crap on?
And other Christmas music, of course, but, Burl Ives. I don't want to hear Burl Ives before Thanksgiving. So, you don't like Burl Ives either? Man,
no, I'm okay with Silver and Gold and Burl Ives. That's okay. That's good. That's good stuff.
I'm checking on you, man. If you were a Rankin and Bass guy or not, I don't know.
Rudolph's all good. It's all good.
You're starting to disturb me.
I enjoy Disturbed. I do like the Disturbed.
You like the Grinch.
I do like the Grinch. I like the Grinch.
I didn't see that one coming based on how this conversation has gone so far.
What a surprise.
Well, Brian, we do have some news. It looks like we at least see not TJ Watt, not yet, not jumping him. He's next. Micah Fitzpatrick is off of the COVID list, so that's a big boon to this team playing on Sunday in Cincinnati at the concrete block that is Paul Brown Stadium. There's a lot of people already picking the Bengals based on some different varieties of factors, based on the last game of which they won in Pittsburgh 24-10, which I don't think is a fair assessment of the Pittsburgh Steelers and their prospects for this game, because in that game they didn't have TJ Watt either. They didn't have Alex Highsmith. They were relying on Melvin Ingram, who's no longer on the team. They were relying on Jameer Jones. Remember him? Camp Phenom. Oh, yeah. Man, I hate to break hearts out there, but when I talk about this stuff leading up camp, preseason, people, Jameer Jones, Cesar Skipper, it's like I'm always like, I get hate mail, and I'm like, look, this broke the streak for the Steelers sacks, whatever it was. It was like beyond 69. It was like 70-something. So they couldn't get to Joe Burrow. When you can't get to Joe Burrow and Ben Roethlisberger throws, 2 interceptions, and you just have a comedy of errors where he got sacked 4 times. Ben attempted 58 passes in that game, which was absolutely insane. I hope we don't see the same thing on Sunday. But I watched the Cleveland Browns team just go into Cincinnati just a few weeks ago and absolutely trashed them. They had 3 plays of 60 yards or more, and I'm saying to myself, can't the Steelers do the same exact thing here? I believe they could if presented the opportunity. And the way Ben's been playing now versus the way he was playing back then, maybe get TJ Watt and some fellas back on this defense. It's going to make a huge deal. Before I kick it over to you, it seems like half of the media, I heard some guys, Charlie Weiss this morning, NFL radio, actually said, hey, look, they're getting some of these guys back. Joe Hayden, TJ Watt makes a big difference. But then there's a whole lot of other ones that are just like, well, the Steelers got blah, 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 blah in the last game. And it's like, did you pay any attention to who was playing on the field? It's like you're not even an innocent bystander. You're talking on national. There's you and I here, and we try and at least get these things proper, right? And people that are like on NFL Network and ESPN and this and that, this is your job. At least to understand who is and isn't on the field when this team last played. This is a completely different defense than what was out there just a week ago against the Chargers. And they still got some stops in the fourth quarter, regardless. So I feel a lot better. I don't think that the Bengals are a better team offensively than the Chargers, but there's still some parallels there.
There's definitely some parallels. No question about that. I mean, you got a quarterback that is, somewhat mobile, has the ability to take off and run, can escape the pocket. You've got a plethora of receivers there. You've got a decent running back in Mixon. You may have a questionable offensive line, but they've played better than they have in recent years. So I'm not going to belittle them as much as I have in the past. You probably have a better defense on the Bengals side than what the Chargers actually have. So this may not be that far off. The biggest difference will depend on what we find out today. Is TJ a full participant? Is Joe Hayden a full participant? Or are they still limited? And even if they are limited, are they still going to go on Sunday? That changes the schema of this game dramatically. So there definitely are parallels. The two teams are not completely disparate, so to speak. There's a lot of similarities there, and the Steelers, if they were to go to Cincinnati with the same team they went to San Diego with, there would be not cause for rejoicing for those Monty Python fans. It would be not cause for rejoicing. There would not be much rejoicing. There would be much sadness. But that hopefully isn't going to be the case. So I've said this before. I'll say it again. I'm cautiously optimistic.
I am too. I was going on the Bengals website. This just drives me crazy with their rule the jungle. They got like this whole like jungle like theme, like the whole kitty cat Bengal thing going, and it makes me a little nauseous. I'll be there with Ryan Lippert, by the way, who's a contributor. He's always doing these scouting reports on these teams, and we just get a good chuckle out of some of this stuff because they have like a ruler of the jungle ceremony before kickoff. And it hasn't been, I don't think it's been announced who the ruler of the jungle is, nor does it really matter who the ruler of the jungle is. But you make a good point, though, Brian, with a lot of this. This is going to be a matchup, I think, primarily Steelers defense versus Bengals offense. And it's not a disrespect toward necessarily the Bengals defense, but the Steelers offense. Do we get the fourth quarter against the Chargers? Is that what we get to see?
Or do we get the first three? Right.
Yeah, or do you get what they did last year where people are always like, oh, why don't they change this? Why don't they install this? Why don't they do that? You got 3 days of practice, of which you don't always have everyone healthy. And how are you supposed to install stuff or new stuff or do things different when Ben Roethlisberger is doing it in Zoom meetings and stuff like that because he's on the COVID list? That stuff just drives me crazy. But let's look. Joe Burrow, we've said this a million times. It seems if you can harass him, he will make some rookie mental mistakes. But for the most part, he's a pretty sharp quarterback. But they've been trying to limit what he does now. Even though he has Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase. Is T. Higgins there still healthy? Yes. Yes, he is. CJ Uzoma has even been a bright spot there at tight end. At certain spots, he can hurt you. Their offensive line is still pretty much garbage. Are they even a step above the Steelers? Maybe a little bit because they could do some things with Joe Mixon, and that's how they've been doing things as of late. I meant to pull up, let's see what Mixon's numbers were. He went 18 for 90 against the Steelers in the last game. He's been putting up some pretty solid games. He just had 123 rush yards on 30 carries against the Raiders. They had a bye in Week 10, so previous to that, it was much the same thing. He was only like 12 carries, 14 carries, 13 carries, also dealing with an injury where they put Samjay Perine, and I'm trying to think who the other they got another young guy at running back there as well that they were cycling in. So Mixon is also a dual threat, so you'll see him catch a few balls, maybe get about 4 or 5 catches, 50-ish yards, give or take, against some of these opponents. But, I mean, this team lost to the Jets in a close one, 34-31. They beat the Ravens. They also beat the Lions pretty handedly, which everyone else in the AFC North had struggled, and they beat the Lions on the road, 34-11. So you don't know which team they're going to get because then they lose 41-16 against the Browns. But the Raiders game is kind of something that I am putting out here too when you're looking at all of these playmakers and everything. They executed well, but the actual game itself against Vegas was 1 for 7 on third downs. They shot themselves in the foot continuously. They were only 1 of 3 in the red zone, where the Bengals were 2 of 2. They put up very similar numbers, 288 yards for 70 plays by the Bengals, whereas there were only 47 plays for 10 fewer yards by the Raiders offense. But the Raiders lost fumbles. I believe there was an interception that was lost here with Derek Carr. They just they couldn't get any momentum going. So it's imperative that the Steelers offense do something, but as well the Steelers defense. So like you said, some of the other injury report here versus the Bengals. The Bengals, pretty much everyone on the Bengals with the extra. They had an extra. If they were sitting out last week or they were limited, they're pretty much full now, and they had the bye before, so they're going to be healthy. But the Steelers going through this, Ben, a full participant after being limited, actually went to practice on Wednesday, which is not usual for him. Joe Hayden has been limited the last 2 days. This is updated with the Friday report as well. I would think with Joe Hayden, just the way it kind of goes with the corners, the way Mike Tomlin is, the older guy here with Hayden, I don't think you want to prolong or re-injure him. I don't know. He will be questionable as it states. I wouldn't count him in. Trey Turner, a full participant. Again, that's a good thing because Steelers are running real thin here with the guards. So J.C. Hassenauer did not practice all week with a pec. He is out. He is filling in for Kevin Dotson, who is on injured reserve as it is. It's either going to be Joe Haig or they brought Rashawn Coward back, who had played in the preseason. Coward is more of a guard than Haig is more of a tackle. So that'll be something to monitor and not going to be pretty when you're thinking about that. That with Dan Moore up against what the Bengals are offering with Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard and some of those guys. So Eric Ebron out. He's probably going to. We've heard he was going to be put on injured reserve. Probably have surgery that's going to end his season. So Kevin Reiter from my alma mater gets called up and is now a full participant on the 53, which is kind of cool. We might see more of Pat Freiermuth and Zach Gentry there, so that might actually preclude to better run game with Najee Harris, because it's not going to give you a look that says, well, we could just blow up Eric Ebron or just ignore him entirely. He's not going to block. We're not going to run the ball there or something of that nature. When Ebron catches the ball, I like having him on the field, but sometimes I feel he's a liability, and his playing time has shown that, along with being banged up for this season. So TJ's back, full participant. That's good to see. We were thinking maybe if he were even limited that he would probably still be game time decision leaning towards playing. Cam Hayward was on here, but that was just a coach's decision. Arthur Millette with an illness, obviously not being put on any other type of lists where he passes negative positive, means full participant on Friday means he's good to go as well. Stomach bug, whatever that may be. So Steelers getting a little bit healthier, but you got to look at that offensive line that they've got, and gives you a little bit of concerns when you're looking at this up against the Bengals defense, which we'll kick over to in just 1 second. Let's see what the line is on the game this Sunday. Cincinnati, of course, being the home team, laying 3.5 points to the Steelers. This is an over-under of 45, which is very tricky. I don't know how this is going to go other than I think this game could be pretty close. I think it will be warfare, particularly both sides of the trenches. So I don't know, Brian, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be a typical AFC North game. It's not going to be. I don't anticipate a blowout on either side unless one side decides to make every mistake under the sun. I think it'll be tight. I think it'll be close. I think I'd lean towards the under in this game. If it was me betting, which of course we know I'm not going to do that because I like my money and I refuse to give it to someone else.
Follow at ZE Flash for all the crazy parlays you could stack on one another.
I'll let Zach Adonia do all that.
I think he bet the Cowboys yesterday on Thanksgiving. It was like and the Raiders. It was like Waller and Schultz or something, or each tight end on each side scores a touchdown.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting because Waller got hurt and he was in street clothes. So I don't know if that worked out for him.
Doesn't seem like that would have been a good thing.
But I don't think he's thinking, and he's probably had passed a couple of the cough syrups back or something like that.
Did you just say Zach Adonia and the word thinking in the same sentence? I don't think that's not valid.
I know, but he's a little giddy. He's a new homeowner, so congratulations to him on that. We'll see if he even listens to this. He's probably busy, maybe stringing up Christmas lights or putting up the holiday cheer around the home. So
could be,
yeah,
could be doing that. No. Anyway, to get back to my point,
yes,
to get back to my point, I expect this to be a tight game. Not to be trite. The team that makes the fewer mistakes is got a better chance to win, and I expect that to be true. Steelers probably are at a disadvantage. The offensive line is not healthy, obviously, as we just discussed. You've got basically now two tackles playing on one side. If Haig is the one that's playing, we'll find out. And we saw how that can be exposed at the end of the Chargers game. A tackle is not a guard. It's just he's not going to be able to deal with the same kind of thing. So I don't know. That it concerns me a great deal. Are they going to only be able to run to the right and not to the left? Is that going to be an issue? Are they going to be able to consistently run the ball? Are they going to try all those ridiculous jet sweeps again? I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. If we see some of the offense we saw, if Chase Claypool continues to make some strides and gets a little better, finds himself ways to get open, there certainly is hope to think we could pull this game out. There's also reasons to not have such a sunny disposition about it. But for me, like I said, TJ to me is a game changer. If TJ is there and Alex Highsmith is there, that is a much different dynamic for Joe Burrow to deal with than what he dealt with the last time these two teams played. I expect them to not have any trouble getting to him at that point, and putting some consistent pressure on Burrow. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I do think it's a low-scoring game, but I think the Steelers can come out on top.
Yeah, I think some people are selling Pittsburgh a little too short. I didn't think that the Bengals ran away with the last game as much as everyone thinks. I think there was just a lot of the same issues you saw with them struggling on defense against the Chargers. And if the offense can wake up, here's the thing. I don't want first, second quarter of the Chargers game on Sunday. I want to see a continuation of what was the fourth quarter. And perhaps they could put the running game in on that because, as we said, and as was said by the coaching staff and all the players and stuff, and Ben and everybody else they interviewed, when you get behind, this was even Drew Brees during that Saints game yesterday, Thanksgiving, talking about the Saints. He had mentioned they were talking about some things with the quarterbacks and things that are different now that he's not there, and how does Sean Payton run this. And it's the same exact thing. When you get behind, you're passing the ball a lot more, and the Steelers were in that rut, so you can't find yourself behind the eight ball right away. And I guess in enemy territory, this is a stadium where I'm going to be curious to see the enthusiasm for the Bengals, because I just said the Browns were just there, and it sounded like, at least on TV and some of the people I know that went, that there was a nice contingent there from Cleveland. and they're excited about their team now. And there's still a lot of Browns fans. There's significantly, I think, more Browns fans across the state of Ohio than there are Bengals fans. So in that same aspect, there's still a lot of displaced Steelers fans, just like myself, that will be there. And I've seen a good turnout there with Steelers fans, even last year with the limited COVID seating type arrangement for a Monday Night Football game. There was still a lot of terrible towels there. So I'm going to be interested in seeing how many of those seats are purchased and how much crowd noise there is for either side of the ball. Now, that being said, we know there was enthusiasm for the Bengals back when there was a playoff game and Joey Porter and Vontaze Burfict and Adam Pac-Man Jones and stuff like that. So these games could get ugly, they could get fueled, but I don't see the same type of, what would you say, like unsporting type behavior, the lack of sportsmanship, or just violence out of these Bengals teams like there were maybe a few years ago with some of the namesakes that were there. The guys that are there now on this defense, they've got some guys. I still think they're kind of suspect in the middle of the field. I think Eli Apple is a corner that you could attack with someone like Chase Claypool, like you mentioned. Chase Claypool showing up big in areas just last week. But we're familiar with Larry Ogunjobi, moved over from the Browns to the Bengals this year. Trey Hendrickson has turned into a hell of a signing for these guys. He leads the team with 9.5 sacks. Ogunjobi has 3.5. You've got Sam Hubbard here with 6 on one of the ends. And who is my other guy on the other end here? I'm missing someone. Well, we got Sam Hubbard. Oh, I'm sorry. Hendrickson's the one end, and then it's DJ Reader and Larry Ogunjobi, who are the tackles primarily here. Mike Hilton. You see him. I don't think Mike Hilton is. I think Mike Hilton's a guy. You talk about Aditi was all over him, and I got a little bit of spat. I'm not sure if we mentioned that on the last show, but it was like the Steelers and their defense and their blitz and their pressure rate and stuff like that. Well, they're not blitzing. That's the whole point, Aditi. They're only sending 4 when they have guys like T.J. Watt and Cam Hayward, and that's a lot different. Mike Hilton isn't a guy that had 100% participation ever on the field. Sometimes he would have 60%, and then sometimes he would have 30%. So, don't act like that Mike Hilton moving over to Cincinnati was that big a factor in what the Steelers can do in pressuring the quarterback. In some games, yeah, you send him there and you're having success, like blitzing him as a corner. If that happens on Sunday, I think Ben can pick him apart, especially with somebody like Pat Freiermuth or one of these guys that he'll probably be lining up against even in the 3 wide receiver sets. Although we do have something to talk about with the special teams, but I'll leave you a little bit on the bone here because, well, Jesse Bates hasn't had quite the same season that he had. And then Von Bell, another guy I think they could exploit. He's more of a run stuffer.
I think this team is still, even at this late date, trying to figure out who and what they are. I think they know they need to be a balanced team that might actually lean towards running as opposed to throwing. I don't think they're there yet, and I don't think the offensive line is going to help them get there this week. But Najee is a superstar in the making. He's been impressive despite what we have seen from the offensive line. I think Freiermuth is clearly a guy that you have to take into consideration. So the offense has some weapons. Can they take advantage of it? The inconsistent play that this offense has given us, that's my biggest concern is consistency, which has not been the hallmark. Although to be fair, the last game was more consistent than I think any game we have seen this season. They had one bad series where they went 3 and out, but for the most part, they were able to move the ball consistently by mixing up pass and run. So if we can see them continue to do that, I think that will certainly help them tremendously. Not to be Captain Obvious.
Well,
I think that there are places they can take advantage. Chase Claypool should be able to take advantage of some of these corners. He absolutely should. Whether he does or not, again, that inconsistent play makes it hard for me to say, sure, he's going to. But he should be able to. They should be able to find Deontay Johnson and get the ball to him. And he's had a much better season as a bounce back season without the challenge of catching the ball. Let's put it that way, because I don't want to say the D word in case that causes us jinxes us. So I'm not going to say that word. Just say catch challenged. He was a little bit last year, that's all been better, right? Ben has actually been, despite everybody being down on Ben, Ben's wash, Ben's actually been pretty damn good, throughout. Has he been perfect? No. Is he ever perfect? No. Is he the same Ben? No. But he's been pretty darn good. So I'm not going to complain overly there. If he continues his play, continues to be smart, if they don't make mistakes, they can absolutely win this game. And there are matchups they can take advantage of, as you said. So, again, cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, and I didn't mention Chidobe Uwozi either, and I think he's another one. They're always trying to play around with what the corners they have. I know Apple wasn't originally brought in. They had Trey Waynes. Apple was kind of brought in to be a rotational guy, and he finds himself starting. I just think there could be like a busted coverage or something. We could see something very similar to what happened with Chase Claypool last week. I see a lot of the same similarities because, like I said, with the Chargers, the Chargers, I thought their corners are actually stronger and their secondary in general when you're talking about Derwin James, but kind of similar play there. And when you see some of these promising things, Joey Bosa or somebody like that on the opposite side, it's still a little, what do you want to say, cautiously optimistic. The defensive line of the Chargers doing what they did against the Steelers' offensive line, and these are more dudes that you got with the Bengals versus what there was with the Chargers. So, yeah, I'm still looking at it. I think what really boils down to here is this game. This is the turning point for either one of these teams. The team that wins is going to be the team that has the upper hand, obviously. Obviously, you can't drop both games to the Bengals. You're not going to win a tiebreaker there. Okay?
No, you can't. This is a very important game.
And the Steelers were down 14 in that last game. They lost by 14, 24-10. So you got to have hopefully a little bit better of a showing here and split this. But it also has to deal with everything else that's going on in the AFC, let alone just the AFC North. Everybody's in the hunt in the AFC North. You take a look over at the AFC West. You've got all of those teams. The Raiders beat the Cowboys. So everyone's like breathing down everyone's necks here. So this is an important one for the Steelers, especially so to kind of prove and say, hey, we're the old guard here. We're the team that's going to continue to do what we've been doing for years. Because if you relinquish this one to the Bengals, now you're dropping, 3 in a row to the Bengals? And that's going back to last year. And it's like looking like a changing of the guard. And that stuff starts to get in here, in your head. So I got to see the Steelers got to be thinking must win, because you got to stack this and then end up playing the Baltimore Ravens in a week as well. And you've also got the Ravens against the Browns. So you got some really heavy hitting AFC North games stacking up one another with all of these teams at this point. Anyways, Brian, the last piece was Ray McCloud is going to be out. So will it be Deontay Johnson returning kicks or punts, I should say? The kick end of this, it's like just throw anyone back there. You can have Benny Snell, as long as he doesn't drop the football, would be fine as far as kick returns.
Kick returns. I'm okay with Benny Snell, not punt returns.
No, you can't have him. So someone was asking me who's the backup. Probably Deontay Johnson in this case.
I would think so. Yeah.
Just going back to camp, I know they've worked Cam Sutton in there. Tomlin is not going to risk one of his beloved defensive backs returning anything on punts. But just the factor of having Deontay Johnson back there, could he do something that we haven't seen for a while? And maybe we get some special teams play that's, breaks the game open, a splash play.
It would be nice. I mean, the thing is, we've seen a lot of nice – there's been 2 blocked punts this year. It's not – the special teams has been solid. I don't think that the return special teams has always been on par with the rest of the special teams. Sometimes they've given up some returns I wasn't happy about, but that happens. But for the most part, special teams has been pretty solid. So it would be nice if the return game could help as a part of that as well, because that has been a missing aspect. Nobody's really thought Ray was going to go all the way with.
No, and well, we'll see. He's actually turned into a nice little option as a receiver, and that's going to hurt too now. I mean, the Steelers still have at least Claypool's healthy. You've got Deontay Johnson, James Washington. Somebody's got to step up. I
actually like that trio. I like that trio being in there. I would much rather have that trio and bring somebody in as the fourth receiver than have Ray be one of the top three. So I think they're better off. I like James Washington better than I like Ray, and I hope he gets some opportunities and can make something of them.
Hey, Brian.
Yo.
I got a message from a fan. I don't know if we want to read it right now, but
let's do it.
Oh, this one, it's about Mac Jones.
Oh, get Doughboy out of my face. I don't care. I don't care.
Oh, he's got all these better stats than Ben, and you look at the Patriots' record right now and all this other stuff. People tend to forget that the Patriots had a lousy season last year as opposed to what the Steelers had. They were in a position to draft him 15th. Would you have rather there was no other quarterback? What are you going to do? I'm dealing with this all the time everywhere I look. Quit talking about quarterbacks when we got 7 games left in the season, okay? I don't even want to hear about quarterbacks until after the Super Bowl. And then we know if Ben's back or not for next year as well. Let's see how Ben plays for the rest of us before we start, digging the hole 6 feet under in the ground.
Could they have gotten Mac Jones? Probably not. I mean, first of all, I don't think they could have moved up to get him to begin with. Because it's 2 parts. 2 parts. You have to have a willing partner. And they have to be willing to give up the draft pick to go get him. I don't think that they were enamored of him. Look,
which leaves him with the worst team. It leaves him with the worst team. He doesn't have as many pieces around him, too.
I will be the first to say he's had a better season than I thought he would. All right? I am still not sold on Mac Jones, though. He's got the benefit. He's got what Ben had early in Ben's career. He's got a very good defense. He's got, as much as this is going to make me vomit in my mouth, probably one of the greatest coaches to ever coach the game in his pocket, and he fits their system, right? So does he fit the Steelers system? No. So.
Okay.
No.
And it's not just draft capital here, but exactly. Not only the system, he's more of a fit. I would think with the coaching, the fit, the money they had for free agency to put pieces everywhere. I don't know that they still have the wide receiver component of that. They are a run-first team with a multi-headed monster over there. They got Damian Harris. They got Brandon Bolden. They've got Ramondre Stevenson, who's the rookie. Not Tomlin. Belichick always has about 3-4 running backs, and this isn't to just do a whole New England thing, but it just kind of peeves me when, okay, let's take a look and see what they have done this year. They lost to the Dolphins. They beat the Jets. They lost to the Saints. That's losing Winston there, so it was a better Saints team. They lost to Tampa. They beat the Houston Texans by 3. There you go. They lost to the Cowboys. They walloped the Jets 54-13. They won by 3 against the Chargers in a close game. They beat a Carolina Panthers team that I don't think that they have Darnold for this game. Let me see. This was Darnold with 3 picks, which significantly will help your quarterback. They whipped the Cleveland Browns, and they beat the Falcons. So you've got like a handful of these teams here that are just absolute. This isn't the toughest schedule in the NFL like the Steelers have. Let's put that up there, number one. How many times has he thrown for 300 this year? Just the once. How many times has he thrown for over 200? A handful here. He's had 3 games where he's been under 200, and then we'll talk about multiple touchdown games. 4 out of how many have they played so far here? Is all the math tends to screw with me at this point. 11 games. So, I mean, take that as you will. He's thrown some interceptions in some of these games as well. He's made some mistakes. He's done all right as a rookie, but they're not necessarily asking him to throw the ball a whole lot. He did have 51 attempts when they lost to the Saints, 40 against the Buccaneers. But most of these games, it's like 30 or less, and they're pounding the rock with the football because New England also happens to have a better offensive line. But it just tends to drive me crazy because if you had, let's say they went out and got Creed Humphrey, then you don't have Pat Freiermuth. What are you doing right now with Ebron going on the shelf? You got Zach Gentry and you got Kevin Rader. It's not going to look very good with the tight end prospects there. And maybe you got one center that doesn't get pushed around as much as Kendrick Green's been doing. Kendrick Green, I don't think Kendrick Green is necessarily a weak guy. I think Kendrick Green is moving from guard to center in the NFL, and that's a transition thing, and he's still got to work on some of his technique and stuff because he's no smaller than Marquise Pouncey or most of the style of centers that the Pittsburgh Steelers have had during all of this. And I've seen improvement as you have, Brian. Has it been pretty? No, it hasn't. That's why they don't want to put rookies on the offensive line, but they're in a position here where they have to play all of these guys, and then that hurt. As we mentioned, that hurts depth because you have to have guys who walked onto this team in camp, undrafted free agents, or just kind of the bargain guys that you find like a Joe Haig, Rashad Coward, guys that are going to fill in like that. It's a product of what has happened, and people will say, well, Kevin Colbert mismanaged the cap. Get out of town, man. It's like you can't be happy when they have a good draft, when they have a TJ Watt, a James Conner, a Juju Smith-Schuster, Cam Sutton, first 4 picks going back to 2017. How do you keep some of these guys? You can't keep when you hit 4 home runs, basically. You have guys like that. I have nothing against James Conner. I think this team would be better off if Juju were around. I was giving that some thought just, this morning.
Oh, I agree.
It moves the chains a lot. Toughness, blocking, those type of skills, leadership, even for being young, entering his 5th year in the NFL. That's kind of tough. So, I always hear these things. Oh, well, they underachieved or they didn't do this with the cap. It's like you got certain players. If they all work out, you can't keep everybody. That's just the way it works. And you're going to start to see some of these rosters start to get rated. If the Browns and Bengals are turning the corner here, they're not going to be able to keep anyone either. And they're not going to be able to go out and buy an Austin Hooper or name somebody else, the John Johnson, the one safety. You can't go out and do those type of moves when they're going to have to pony up and back up the truck for Baker Mayfield and stuff like that. So, and then on the other hand, you got teams like the Eagles that backed up the truck with draft picks and they just gave everything away. And you give everything away and then it's like, well, now what do you got? Now you don't even have picks that you could do anything. You've played with the cap so much. We said the cap's a myth, but it eventually comes back to bite you in the ass. And the Steelers, they had this same thing about a decade ago with Troy Polamalu and some of the veteran players that were starting to walk away. And they restructured guys. Heath Miller walks away, and then you're still paying out some of that, and you're taking some of those cap hits. And somebody in the comments here, I forget who it was, but it was on YouTube. They said it too, Brian. We all forget that this was after the COVID season where the cap didn't go up or increase as much as you may have expected. Maybe they could have made a play at a Bud Dupree or a Mike Hilton or anything like that. So there's just so many subjective things here. I can't believe we're entering a game. What week is this now where we're talking about week 12, and we're talking about either what's next year. What about next year? Enjoy this year. Stay on board this year. This is a team that's still in the race. They're 5-4-1. They still have a bunch of AFC North games to go. Don't pull out the shovel and bury them already. Don't bury Ben. Don't bury all these people. You don't know what's going to happen. They can get hot. Maybe they figure it out. Maybe they figured it out against the Chargers, and now all of a sudden they're going to rip off 20-some points per game as an offense. Am I expecting that? No, I'm not expecting that. But it could happen. We've seen different things where we've seen the opposite, where they've done well and then they fade and burn. So everybody's just like, oh, they're just going to fade and burn, tank and get somebody like Trevor Lawrence. Because you know what? The Jaguars are doing so freaking impressive. Or, hey, Jared Goff, that guy that the Rams put all that up for. And yeah, they went out and got Stafford and they got some of these other guys. And now all of a sudden they're Odell Beckham and Von Miller. And yeah, that should try and get them in their competitive division to get there. But guess what? They've lost some games too. So nothing is perfect when it comes to roster building and doing all of this stuff. When you draft, you're lucky if you get a handful of guys, maybe 1 or 2 of your top best picks that are long-term contributors that you also hope to re-sign and keep on the team. That's going to be Najee Harris. It's going to be Pat Freiermuth. Both of them are going to help whoever the quarterback is. Ben Roethlisberger, Mason Rudolph, Dwayne Haskins, a future draft pick, whatever it may be. Those guys are on the team for 3 years beyond now. at least on their rookie contracts. The defense, those pieces are in place. So they got their eye on the future. It's just not the future. You want the 15-year quarterback yesterday to replace Ben. They want the Aaron Rodgers to Brett Favre situation, and it does not work out that way. I'm sorry. I get tired. It's like I mentioned this all summer, but some of the folks on here might only watch. They tune in and out during the season. You got to go back to one of those and how we talked about it. And by all means, playing about a dozen games so far into this season does not make or break a Mac Jones or anybody else that's been playing. Trevor Lawrence or Trey Lance, who hasn't been playing much at all. Justin Fields. You need 3-4 years to see where these guys are going to be. And you go back to that and you see some of that class. The Mason Rudolph, you see Lamar Jackson, you see Baker Mayfield, you see Josh Allen, you see what these guys, Josh Rosen, what becomes of them. You know what I mean? And one of them is, well, I think he's with the Falcons right now. Geez, is he still talking about beating Brady's records or whatever? But completely crashed and burned. And jury's still out, I think, on Baker Mayfield. I think Allen, they paying him a bunch of money, and he has matured into what you would think. But it was a rough go from the start. These guys got to get this experience, and it's never a guaranteed thing that if you go and you shoot, you go all in, you push all the chips in on one of these first round, to just use a first round pick on a quarterback, you might be hurting your team in other ways.
Yeah, I mean, we can continue to discuss it ad nauseum, or we can just say, look, as I just said, Mac Jones had a better season so far than I anticipated he would. I will give him credit for that. I think he landed in an ideal situation for him to do that. I am not going to back off of my I don't want him philosophy until, somebody absolutely forces me to eat my words and he's won 3 Super Bowls down the road. I don't think that's going to happen. So if it does, I'm not afraid to say I was wrong. Doesn't happen often.
Yeah, it doesn't happen at all. So,
but if it does, I'll say it because, because because I'm a man and I can admit when I'm wrong. Damn it.
Well, not to be funny, but it's like we said these things over the years. We don't always get them right all the time. There's certain draft picks that we like. There's guys that we defend. We defended Bud Dupree tooth and nail, and then he came out and ended up being what he was. It's just, and then you got guys like Artie Burns that just flame out and burn out, and I don't think that was really like. Although he did play in that game yesterday. Got some playing time. He's back on the field, so good for him. I mean, his story is something too. I don't know. Like Mac Jones wouldn't even be playing, so you're burning. Then you would burn a draft pick, and who's your running back right now? I know James Conner didn't get a whole lot of offers, but James Conner has been doing well in Arizona because of the system and being able to trade off with another running back. You go and you do all this, and we added like another 20 minutes of talking probably to this show for the 2%ers, but just, it doesn't even have to be Mac Jones. It could have been any of those guys. And there were others that wanted Kyle Trask. He wouldn't be playing either. Okay, he still wouldn't have been playing, even if they would have drafted him, because they would have had Mason Rudolph in that game against the Lions anyways. They would have still sat his ass for the whole year, and he would be inactive the same way they're redshirting Dwayne Haskins right now. Maybe they bring Dwayne Haskins back on another futures or exclusive rights or whatever ends up happening with his situation, and we shall see. But I'm not looking at 2022. I'm looking at 2021, and I'm saying to myself, the Steelers win this game right here. They start to put themselves in more of a driver's seat, because if they can stack 2 wins here with the Bengals on the road, go back home, beat the Baltimore Ravens in their own house, which I think will be a testy game, because I think the Ravens' record doesn't truly reflect. That could easily be the Steelers' record as well. There's a lot of close games with all of these teams in the AFC North, and it's coming down to basically an eyelash as to whether or not these teams win, lose, tie, which screws all of this up. If they can get these 2 wins here, that helps them with the division record. They'll have they'll be 3-1 because they dropped the one to the Bengals. They've already beaten the Browns. If they can get one more, if they win 4 games in this division, they can win the division. It doesn't. The rest of it, just as long as they don't stink the joint out, they'll be somewhere in there, and then that means they host a home playoff game. That's the ideal situation right here, and they still have 2 games against the Ravens. The Browns do as well. In fact, it goes what? The Browns and Ravens, they have a bye week in between them. They play each other back-to-back with a bye week in the middle sandwiched in. So that's going to be absolutely or no, do I have that right? It's close. They play each other like back-to-back almost here. But anyways, these teams are all going to be playing each other, and maybe they all trade off, and then all of a sudden everybody's in a muddle huddle here, and the Steelers can rise as the cream to the top. You got to hope that that's the best situation. Am I 100% confident, Brian, in that happening? No, because I've seen enough bad this year, and I understand some of the transitory things that are happening with this team. But I also look at the competition that they have in the entire AFC. You can't tell me that some of the teams, like the Patriots we just mentioned, with some of the teams they get to beat up on, or even the Buffalo Bills for that matter, they drop some questionable games all season. I think everyone is ripe for the picking as far as it goes, and that's how it's going to end up, but it's got to start this Sunday. So, put a bow on it. Any remaining thoughts, my friend?
Nah.
Get the Christmas lights up.
I'm going to say, you know what I do? I use one of them laser things. I go plug it in, I'm done. That's it.
That's so lazy.
It's about as Christmas spirity as I get. But again, because we've teased this multiple times, and one way or the other, by the end of next week, by our pregame for next week's show, we're going to make a decision on how we're going to give these 2 helmets away.
Oh,
so we are going to do it. I promise you, we're going to do it. We're going to make that decision. It may just be too complicated to do something with the food bank, even though I would like to do that. We're going to come up with something, and when we do, we will talk about it. Maybe a week from today. Does that sound right? That's when we try and do it? Friday, a week from today.
I don't if I'm
able
to get on. It depends if they have a bazillion freaking injuries where we also have to wait. But we also had the holiday too, so hopefully it was a festive one for you, yours, and everyone else that was listening and viewing. So thanks for joining us. Sorry if I got a little feisty there. But I know that was addressed to you because I know you were giving a lot more flack toward Mac Jones. Mac Jones, to me, I don't know. The people are already going to act like just because of the situation he's in and he's on a trajectory to be the next Tom Brady, there ain't never going to be another Tom Brady. I hate to tell you that. There never was and never will be.
Can we not? I don't
I know, and it makes me...
Please, I just don't want one.
Yeah.
And a vomit.
I need a hot shower after talking about him.
Yeah.
Yeah, can he just go away so everyone else could win? At least he's in the NFC.
Go away.
just go away.
Please be done.
Not only that, let's toss the cherry on. Do we put cherries on pumpkin pie? You at least put the Cool Whip. The Cool Whip.
I don't know.
Whip. Yeah.
Oh.
No, I got to tell you, Mike Tomlin said he prefers a veteran quarterback.
Yes.
So now all of a sudden everyone's like Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson, and there's somebody else tossed into this conversation. I said, maybe the Packers do because they seem to be doing boneheaded things with their organization and the handling of Aaron Rodgers and the way he's been. There's a little smoke to that fire. Russell Wilson, I don't think is going anywhere. That team immediately in that division goes into the doldrums. Pete Carroll.
To the bottom, right to the bottom of that.
And Pete Carroll will be gone too because isn't he like 70 now? He's getting up there in age as far as, as a human being. How much longer is he going to coach? Is he going to coach into his 80s? So and they're not doing so hot this year either. But I don't think Russell Wilson goes anywhere. That's a cornerstone. That's how you attract Pete Carroll's replacement as a coach and stuff like that too. So just these things just drive me absolutely just bonkers. Like, okay, maybe the Aaron Rodgers thing. Who's the other veteran that I'm thinking about might be available? Oh, and of course, Jimmy Garoppolo. Why do you want the guy that can only play 6 games in a season? It's never healthy and isn't really that good when he is. I mean, that just drives me crazy that you got such an offensive-minded coach like Kyle Shanahan, and you got George Kittle. It's the same thing. You got all these weapons. You can make the excuses with the injuries and stuff they've had, but that's not some guy that I want on. I don't want him there either. The only one I was willing to part with was Matt Stafford. But the kind of goes way past what we were talking about looking ahead to the Bengals Sunday. I hate looking that far ahead. I just want to look at the game right now. And then maybe a couple that are more. I am not even mentioning the Titans and some of these other games that are coming up. They've got a lot of AFC football, too, where they could jostle and create some position for themselves, hopefully, to make a playoff run. We'll see what ends up happening. But I know everybody's Super Bowl or bust, Brian. Super Bowls are rare. You look at some of the combinations. You see like Tony Dungy and Peyton Manning. It's not like, they have like a ton of trophies in the case. Guys like that. Tom Coughlin, when he was with Eli Manning, they were able to do it twice. With the Patriots are just like that very rare, I hate to use the word dynasty, but it is inflated everyone's thought. And it happens with other sports because of lack thereof of salary cap or super teams, Major League Baseball, NBA, those type of things happen, but that doesn't happen in the NFL. Look at how many teams have like 5 wins, 6 wins out there right now. There's a few teams you could say are absolutely trash and not going anywhere, like the Texans, and then they even win. You know what I mean? The Jaguars or something. So you can't say all that. And, of course, the Lions, the lowly Lions, of course. We have to look at that. -1 next to the record. I wish they would have been able to pull out that victory, but for a variety of reasons, most of which who didn't watch that game because it wasn't widely televised, aren't aware of, and you're just going to say, fire Mike Tomlin, fire everyone else so you could become the next Detroit Lions, and I'm not looking forward to that scenario either. So my name's Joe. His name's Brian. Thanks, Brian. Got me all fired up. I like when those things come in while we're putting the show together. We're going to try and make it a quick preview for those of yins out there that are hanging your Christmas lights, putting up the tree, and playing Mimi. So take it easy.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
Like, comment, subscribe. Take care of yourself. As we always say.
Be good.
No. I was almost going to say your line, actually, because you haven't done a solo in a while.
I haven't done a solo in a life. It's chaos out there.
Yeah.
So be kind.
Absolutely. And be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.